the greatest shift in leadership isn't about what we build, it is about what we are willing to heal. Now, too often, success gets measured by, listeners' titles, revenues, salaries, and applause. Um, but behind all these numbers, many leaders are quietly shrinking, performing strength while carrying unhealed stories. Welcome back, listeners, to today's episode on the BizBlend podcast. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and I'm joined by John Taylor McEntire, a leadership strategist, international speaker, and creator of the Sync method. Now, his journey from outward success to inner alignment challenges us to ask this very vital question: what does it really mean to thrive, not just succeed? So, let's quickly dive in to get the answers. And, John, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really excited for this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Sana. I'm really glad to be here at BizBlend. It's a great podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for your kind words. And, before trying to understand, success and purpose, um, at what, was there any particular moment or any, series of events that made you question, this entire structure of just measuring success externally and not focusing on what's your purpose, or are you actually aligned with what you're doing?
Very good questions.
Mhm.
So, what what I would like to say is that success comes in different shapes and sizes, and
Okay.
I think that everybody has an opportunity to see success along the way, but
Mhm.
sometimes the success that we're looking at is um, is really outward success. It's what people perceive of us rather than
Mhm.
what's going on inside. And so um, I didn't realize this until you know a short time ago that
Mhm.
that past trauma, childhood trauma, was really affecting me. And
Okay.
uh, as I was going through my 35-year career, working for
Mhm.
lots of different types of organizations, it was very easy for me to climb the ladder. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is that as a person who became a perfectionist and a people pleaser, um,
Okay.
and what I figured out later, somebody who didn't really esteem themselves very highly, um,
Hmm.
it it made it very easy for me to, as long as I knew what my boss or my boss's boss needed or wanted, from me, then
Mhm.
I would perform really well. And so performance was really a matter of, you know, going to the nth degree, uh,
Yeah.
perfectionist tendency,
Mhm.
to make sure that I'm doing my job the best that I can to make others shine. And um, what what I didn't know was that there's this difference between performing success and embodying purpose. So there wasn't a lot of purpose in regards to those types of activities, although it did help me climb the ladder. It did help me get earn more money to take care of my family, those types of things. But the the embodying purpose, that wasn't my purpose. That was somebody else's purpose, and that's what I had to find out. So as I climbed up the ladder in all these different organizations around the world,
Mhm.
and very types of organizations, um, when I came to a point where I was putting together my coaching, my consulting business, Mutual
Mhm.
Prosperity, I was kind of feeling blocks and things in the way, and I was trying to figure out what was that. And
Mhm.
this was when I was really trying to find that inner purpose. And I realized that um, actually through a dream some time
Okay.
ago, that I had had, some traumatic experiences when I was 2.5, when I was 5, when I was 6, when I was 9, when I was
Mhm.
11. And all these different things had shaped me to become who I am, and
Mm,
and I needed to let some of that go to be able to climb to the next level, and that was to be
mhm,
a leader of myself and a leader of although I had been leading others,
mhm.
of being able to lead with more authenticity was
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. That you felt that hollowness. John, do you think these realizations, because sometimes we need to be kind of ready to take risks, because not many people will have that liberty to take chances, whether they're stuck in a job or they're stuck in their journey of entrepreneurship, where they feel that this is not something for me, or this is not something which I'm aligned with. But I have certain limitations, I have certain liabilities. Do you think it comes, when we don't have any liabilities, or we, or I mean, that's what's your thought on this?
So, a very good question, and I there's not that there's never gonna be a place where there's no liabilities. It's just a matter of how we look at those things in ourselves.
Mm,
So, what I've learned over the last years, having had, professional coaches myself, over the course of my career, and especially the last, 4 to 5 years, as I've been putting together my own business, my own methodology and such, it was actually looking at those places where, I was weak or the weakest, and trying to figure out how I fill in those blanks. So,
mhm.
I'm an avid reader, and, I have 2 dogs. They're Salukis. It's like a greyhound, but they
Wow.
need lots of walking. And so I walk with them about an hour each day, and I'm constantly
Wow.
listening to audiobooks. And so I'm able to read about 50 to 60 audiobooks a year. And
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
and so that what I found is that I'll finish one book, and then
Uh-huh.
I'll go to another book, but because audiobooks is the way it is in the algorithm, it it
Yeah.
it ends up choosing the next book that I need.
Exactly.
And
True.
it's interesting to be able to see yourself from the perspective of some other author, who has gone through similar experiences
Mm,
that we have. And that's how we learn from each other. My view of the world is that, each one of us is a piece of the puzzle of life. And
mhm,
that means that we're a piece of the puzzle of our families, but we're also the piece of the puzzle of the organizations that we work with. And in order for that piece to fit in naturally within the other puzzle pieces to make a beautiful picture, we need to, as leaders, be able to offer those people who work under us, um, some margin around that puzzle piece. So you don't just give them a puzzle piece the size of what you want them to do, but you need to put leeway in there because they're going to be coming with more than just that aspect. And so if you allow them to put in more of themselves in this extra space, this margin that you've created, then
mhm,
it's able to dovetail with the others more um ingeniously, and everybody's going to be pulling everything out. So part of the sync
mhm,
method is a leader needs to be able to inspire, empower, and help their team to thrive. And so when you look at that from the leader, the first thing that you need to be doing, and I'll let me just talk about sync for just a minute. Sync is SYNC.
yeah, sure.
Synchronize yourself naturally within your community. And so that yourself part is actually the middle portion of puzzle pieces that create this pyramid, um, and of the sync method. and we need to work on ourselves before we can work on anybody else. And so that's where it's important um to recognize where our strengths and our weaknesses are, you know, of course, allow the strengths to continue to be strong, but not in a but in a humble way, okay? Not in some proud way.
Mm.
And then to work with those things that we're deficient in and trying to make those things happen. And that's where we're able to rise up to the occasion and start embodying purpose. We can then understand what our piece of the puzzle of life is supposed to be.
Mm. Uh, yeah, that's very powerful, actually, John. It's very powerful. Now, I would like to, revisit back to that unhealed trauma that you mentioned in the beginning. Now,
Mhm.
um, why do you think these patterns or these this category of discussion, the as people would call it, more towards the softer aspects, the more human aspects, actually, why do they go so unnoticed in business culture? Is it because of the rigidity, or the fact that business is all about profit and numbers, and yeah, anything is fair in business? Yeah.
I it's a very provocative question. And
Okay.
it takes a lot of, I think, of unwrapping to help us understand it a little bit more. Every culture has um has this need to uh show people in a certain mode. So in in the East, Eastern cultures, there's
Mhm.
this hierarchy in regards to there's the master, or the sensei, the person who is above you, who's training you, who you speak respectfully to. So this gets us into how education is different from the
Yeah.
and the West. And so when you're talking with a master or with your sensei, um, with a guru, you're absorbing what they're saying and what they're presenting to you, but you're not
Mhm.
necessarily questioning, because questioning would be disrespectful. In the West, when it comes to education, especially in
Mm.
the United States, people are
Yeah.
expected to ask questions and be provocative, and sometimes
Mm.
it gets out of hand. And so there's a balance between these two,
Yeah.
where there you need to be able to allow people a little bit more freedom than maybe the Eastern philosophies showcase, but you don't want it to be arrogant in the way that the Western philosophies do. So I think about like the British royal family. Um, they are always stoic, and when you
Mm.
think about Queen Elizabeth, somebody who had so many decades of leadership responsibility in the world, and
Mhm.
she just exuded this high level of respect and restraint, and
Yeah.
um, and that we don't see very much
Yeah.
anymore. And I think
Yeah.
that there's something about that where, um, because she came across as such, I mean, she was very respected to be this monarch and everything, but but she did have some human side to her too that came out, you know,
Mm.
or towards her later years. And so there's this melding of both, um, the public persona and the inside turmoil. And I would imagine that she had turmoil just like anybody else.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Because of all the different things that she experienced in her life, and having to take on a sovereign role, at such a young age, but doing it with such maturity.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really great example. Really great example. Um, and do you think, John, that vulnerability is a risk in leadership? Because let's just say that Right now, the markets are super competitive. We have so much rapid advancements in technology. We have uncertainty. Companies that don't thrive in the change, they just vanish. I mean, we have seen a lot of examples out there. So, doesn't showing too much of yourself risk losing authority or credibility with your team or investors or the stakeholders?
And this is a really, really thought-provoking question, and it's something that I think everybody needs to gain a personal understanding of. What
Mhm,
so let me just my childhood trauma was that I grew up in a home where I had a domineering father, a mother who was quite neurotic, but also had depression. Was constantly in pain because she had had some back surgery and was on
mhm,
medication, and I had to become a buffer between the two, or I thought that I needed to become a buffer between the two of them, and so I end up being a perfectionist and a people pleaser, trying to make sure that my mom's duties were taken care of, like cleaning the house, cooking the
mhm,
food, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, taking care of my siblings because my mother was in bed and unable to take care of them, and I didn't want her to get in trouble with my father. And this brought me into people pleasing and perfectionist tendencies, and always trying to balance things out, which a child should never have to do. And it's
mhm,
not that they were expecting me to do that. It's just that I ended up being in that. So once I realized that that was part of my persona and what was holding me together, but also holding me back at the same time, um, I realized that I needed to be uh, more open with things. The other thing is that I grew up in theater and from 9 to 19, and I was heavily involved with lots of different media, the big stage, a little bit of television, a little bit of movies and recordings and such. And and so my father, because we I had other siblings, um,
mhm,
he would tell me, he goes, "Well, you know, do you always have to have the spotlight? You should let other people have the spotlight." And so that got into
mhm,
my mind. And then the other thing is that because we'd had a chance to travel quite a bit, he'd also told me, "Don't be the one who one-ups everybody else, let other people shine." And so that made me hold back. So when I had that dream of all those different experiences that made me who I am, um, and those trauma things, and then I was able to go through with the help of some of my coaches, to
mhm,
and therapists, to pull out, the fact that my parents were doing what they could, the best that they could, and so I don't have any um, angst against them. I'm not angry with them anymore. But I realized that I needed to be my own self. So a lot of my
mhm,
stories and stuff, I wasn't even telling my kids when they were growing up, and I have a good relationship with my children. I have 6 kids and such. But now that this has all come out in the open the last couple years, I've been able to be very truthful with them and let them know these different things, and because of that vulnerability, the closeness to my family members and those others around me has just been strengthened. So I believe that the answer to your question is that those leaders that don't show the vulnerable side of themselves, are the ones who are not going to be able to placate the market in the way that they need to, because
mhm.
the brand of themselves needs to come out in an authentic way, and authenticity. Nobody wants to see the perfect Instagram posts. People get tired of seeing those, and
Yeah.
and um, one thing that because I've dealt a lot with startups in the tech world, and
Mhm,
as I've worked with these startups and I've seen them, get funding from VC venture capitalists and other investors, and
mhm,
doing their initial public offering and things like that, and then getting acquired. I've just noticed that um, these companies that um, were able to Uh, so let me say it this way: these VCs would be finding leaders to manage these new startups and such
Mhm.
to go to the next level, but
Mhm.
they didn't hire somebody who only had success. They actually praised the fact that the people had failure under their belt, because failure is a much higher indicator of showing if somebody can be successful than somebody who may have, you know, hit the lottery.
Been
They
been
got
successful.
their product and service at the right time and the right moment, and everything was lucky. Well, luck doesn't
Mhm.
really do much for showing how people grow and everything. It's really those people who went through failure that rose from that are the ones that should be praised.
Mm. Yeah, that really makes sense, John. Really makes sense. And I think it really keeps you grounded, centered. And of course, these words are buzzwords, but they aren't just buzzwords because um, failures, they really give you the real picture, the raw, the realness of what has to be done, what has not to be done. Because we, as an entrepreneur, we may not have answers to all the questions, we may not have solutions to all the problems, but I think that clarity and awareness, um, you know, and that ability to understand that what exactly, how exactly you can lead humans, not just machines or robots. I think that keeps you grounded and centered in the most turbulent times as well.
Oh, and I think you just hit on it right there, especially as we're building up this AI world of ours. Um,
Mm.
we as humans need to understand how we fit into that mold. We can either say, "Oh, AI is gonna rule us," or we can rule AI. And that's it needs to be that we rule AI. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think that that's where the vulnerability comes into play, and um, trying to be truthful with our own expertise or our weaknesses. Um, and as people, as a leader, if we're showing people that we're striving to grow in the areas where we're weakest, then those people that we lead are going to be interested in doing the same thing, because it'll be leading by example. And then you end up having a leader who's developing leaders rather than developing, little robots that are doing different pieces of the puzzle, but they're not really, all they're thinking about is their own thing. They need to be thinking outside of the box of how their piece fits with the others and how they can augment that to be, more beneficial to the whole. And if a leader can get that type of mentality and that type of thinking in their teams, and get them aligned and get them really syncing together,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
then it makes things work so much better. And then things have the ability to have momentum, take them, much further than they could go if they didn't have that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That 100% makes sense. And before we wrap up, John, I would once again um, request you to revisit your sync method, how you help entrepreneurs reconnect with their core identity. So if you can.
Yes, great, thank you so much. So I'm focusing right now on helping leaders who have moved up the ladder from maybe a vice president position to a senior vice president or executive vice president position. So, in that transition, oftentimes they're going from, managing tens of people, um,
Mhm.
to managing now hundreds of people, and those hundreds of people are across borders, across um, uh, languages, across cultures, across time zones, and so they have a brand new way of looking at things. What got them to that point? Okay, um, maybe being a perfectionist, maybe being a people pleaser or whatnot. what got them to that point is not going to get them is not going to keep them where they're at. They need to grow in order to get there. So I help them understand, where those holes are that need to be those gaps that need to be filled, and
Mhm.
that's through the sync method. So the synchronized part is really how do you align with your team, is using Japanese consensus building techniques, as well as making sure that language is understood across the board. So I have a language alignment matrix that I help people go through, a cultural alignment matrix. Then the yourself part is understanding those key components of what makes you special as a person, but also identifies you as a leader. And then the natural
Mhm.
wise is how do you deal with intuition and and deal with these different historical and cultural aspects from around the world, around the globe, that are coming at us all the time because we have these diverse teams that we're working with more so than ever before. And then the C is the community. And how do you communitize that? How do you build community where people
Wow.
are growing and healing? And so this is really trying to help the leader understand how to gain that buy-in that comes from them allowing people to be involved with creating the mission and the vision and going
Mhm.
forward.
Really interesting, John. Very interesting. So, of course, if our listeners, especially all the entrepreneurs and founders, in fact, business owners as well, who are listening to this, and they would like to connect with you and explore more about Sync method, and they would also like to share their thoughts, what would be the best way?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's John Taylor McEntire. And then also my company, mutualprosperity.com. That my website would be a good place to contact me. But I'm very active on LinkedIn and would love to have any conversation in either venue.
Super. I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes for our listeners. And John, um, thank you. I mean, it's not often, very common that that on a business podcast that someone is so candid and openly sharing their not only highs but lows. They're showing their human side, and I really appreciate that you shared your story, reminding us that what sustains us isn't the grind, but the rhythm we choose to live by. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for recognizing the rhythm part because that's really what Off Sync is about. So appreciate
Oh,
that.
thank you. Thank you, John. And to all the listeners, as we close this conversation, I'm struck by how much of this, has been about permission, listeners. Permission for leaders to stop performing, to pause, to realign. And, maybe the question isn't how do I do more, but how do I do it from a place that feels true, that feels aligned. Because in the end, thriving isn't just about what we build, it is about who we become while building it. Until then, this is the BizBlend podcast, and I have been your host, Sarah. Thank you.